All right, let's wrap up this module on prologues and genealogies by looking at Luke's genealogy. So here we find in Luke chapter 3, verses 23b through 38, we find another genealogy of Jesus, which this is typically thought of as Jesus' natural lineage through Mary. So Mark Strauss says this: Luke's genealogy provides further confirmation that Jesus is the Messiah. As in Matthew, Jesus' ancestry is traced back through David and Abraham, confirming that he is the fulfillment of God's covenants. Yet while Matthew's genealogy begins with Abraham, Luke's goes back to Adam. This fits his emphasis on the universal application of the gospel. Jesus is not just Israel's Messiah. He is the Savior of all humanity. Luke's genealogy, which culminates with Adam, reflects Luke's interest in the salvation available to all humanity. I like that. And it fits like we talked about in our previous module too. So one of the things though I mentioned in our last video that we wanted to talk about now was how the Old Testament prophets frequently prophesied about a king to come specifically from the line of David. Let's look at a couple of significant prophecies about this. The first one, of course, was when it was given to David by Nathan. So in 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 11, it says, "From the time that I appointed judges over my people Israel," speaking over there, he says, "and I will give you rest from all of your enemies. Moreover, the Lord declares to you, David, that the Lord will make you a house." Verse 12, "When your days are fulfilled and you lie down with your fathers, I will raise up your offspring after you," which in this first case is Solomon, but has a bigger meaning as we'll see, "who shall come from your body, and I will establish his kingdom." So here we have a promise to God, or to David from God through the prophet Nathan, that God is going to establish a kingdom through David's line. But then it goes on more in the next verses. "He shall build a house for my name," again talking about the direct descendant Solomon, "and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son. When he commits iniquity, I will discipline him with the rod of men, with the stripes of the sons of men. But my steadfast love will not depart from him as I took it from Saul." So here he's starting to make a comparison here between Saul, the first king of Israel, and this coming king, which would have been Solomon, and the line that's going to follow. It says, "But my steadfast love will not depart from him as I took it from Saul, whom I put away before you. And your house and your kingdom shall be made sure forever before me. Your throne shall be established forever." Now that is a very significant promise that was given to David, and it is followed and it is echoed throughout the prophets in the coming generations. For example, Isaiah 9 says, "Of the increase," this is of course about the coming Messiah, but he says, "of the increase of his government of peace there will be no end, on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this." Now here, this is a messianic prophecy, but it specifically mentions that this Messiah will reign on the throne of David and over his kingdom. This is important. Jeremiah mentions the same thing. Jeremiah 23:5, "Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will raise up for David a righteous branch. He shall reign as king and deal wisely, and he shall execute justice and righteousness in the land. In his days, Judah will be saved, and Israel will dwell securely. This is the name by which he will be called. The Lord is our righteousness." So this is why Joseph now becomes so incredibly important. Why is that? Because Joseph was the link between the kingly Davidic promises and the Christ child. So even though Luke's genealogy is typically thought of as following through his natural lineage, which is through Mary, Joseph becomes a very important person in the genealogy that we will go and turn to. In fact, look at this. Luke starts with Joseph. Now, Luke's genealogy is different than Matthew's in that he goes in reverse order. He doesn't start at the beginning and go up to Christ. He starts with Joseph and goes back to Adam. So first thing we notice is that he starts with Joseph, right? And also that he goes backwards in reverse order. Luke also clearly mentions Jesus' connection to Abraham and to David, just like Matthew did, but he wants to go all the way back to Adam. So from Abraham to David, there's a lot of similarities between Matthew and Luke's genealogies, but from David to Jesus, there's a lot more differences. So, for example, Luke's list is 40 names, whereas Matthew's from David to Joseph is only 26 names. So there's a lot more names that Luke includes. Matthew follows David's son Solomon, while Luke follows Nathan, another one of David's sons. And as we talked about previously, Matthew's intent was to be structured and memorable, but Luke, knowing his care and attention to detail, he probably intended to be as complete and accurate as possible. So let's now go back and look at Luke's genealogy here. You can see that it starts with Joseph. I'm not going to read all these names, but it goes all the way down here, and we can see that it stops right there. If we flip over to the next page, it talks about how it goes all the way down, starting with Joseph and ending here down in verse 38 of chapter 3. It says right there that we have the son of Enosh, the son of Seth, the son of Adam, the son of God. Now here, Luke intentionally connects Joseph to Adam to show the universal connection from the very first man up to the stepfather or the caretaker of Jesus. Of course, Joseph wasn't Jesus' father, but Mary was Jesus' mother, which is why many people think that this is the line of Mary that gets followed. Anyways, there's a brief introduction to both genealogies. Matthew's genealogy begins with Abraham. Luke's genealogy begins with Adam. We talked about how to Matthew, Jesus is the Jewish Messiah, so therefore he begins with Abraham and he follows the Jewish heritage. Luke, of course, his emphasis is that Jesus is the Savior of the world. He therefore begins with Adam to emphasize the universal salvation. We talked about that earlier. But what's awesome and what's so important as we close this video and close this module to remember, of all of this study as we talk about the prologues and the genealogies, that the genealogies here remind us that Jesus is both the Messiah from the line of David and the Savior of the whole world. Okay, so what we want to do next is we want to shift back to looking at the culture and background of the text. So what we're going to do in Module 4 is we are going to take a deep dive into the historical setting of the Gospels, and we're going to really look at answering the question, what events led up to the context or the background of the Gospel accounts? So join me if you would in Module 4 as we look at the historical setting of the Gospels.